Well, Sooners everywhere have long said they've wanted a piece of the SEC. But in OU's first football season in the league, the piece they're going to get may be tough to swallow. How difficult is it? Plus, is OU softball eyeing a big, huge, colossal transfer? And what about parity in the NBA? We'll talk about that with our friend and Tulsa World columnist Berry Tramel now on the Jenni Carlson Show. But before we get to that, I want to encourage you to subscribe first to my YouTube channel at Jenni-Carlson. Just hit that subscribe button. It's really easy and it's free to you, but it helps me a bunch. Then I hope you'll subscribe to my Substack if you haven't already. You can subscribe for free, or if you want to support my work with a paid subscription, you can do that too. I hope you consider subscribing no matter what level. Well, Barry, how's it going?
Going good, Jacko. Looking forward to week or two. All of a sudden, the world changes for the state of Oklahoma. New Big 12, new SEC. Going to be a brave new world.
Yeah. We're less than 2 weeks away from that July 1st date that it all becomes official. And looking ahead to that, in the Sunday Tulsa World, you had your rankings of the SEC games involving SEC teams. This is all 128 games, conference and non-conference. You based your rankings on how impactful the games will be in the SEC to get 4 or maybe more teams in the playoffs. Those guys are really desiring a domination of the playoff, but people can find those rankings at tulsaworld.com. OU has 5 of your top 20 games and 6 of the top 22. Yikes.
Well, ESPN came out with its top 25. It does a new one every 3 weeks, it seems like. But the most recent one came out with its top 25. And the Sooners in the SEC play 6 of the top 15 teams in the ESPN top 25. And Oklahoma's involved in that too. So, and they can't play themselves. If they could, they probably would have been scheduled by the SEC. But, it's a loaded conference schedule. It sort of makes you want to give Joe C. and Brent Venables a free pass for the weak non-conference schedule, perhaps the weakest non-conference schedule in OU history. But you can live with it when you look at that stretch. They hosting Tennessee and hosting Alabama, go to Ole Miss, Missouri, and LSU. And the easy road game is at Auburn, Jordan-Hare Stadium. So it's a killer's row, and going to be very difficult for the Sooners to have great success. Even with a good team, the Sooners could take several hits there. So you wanted the SEC, they got the SEC, and this is in all its glory and splendor.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough schedule. We knew that though when it came out. It just we keep getting it reinforced by these early preseason rankings coming out. But I'm curious, people will see this when they go to your rankings at the Tulsa World website. But the top game you had for OU is the Sooners game at Missouri. That's the best Sooners game in your ranking. Were you surprised that you came around to that being the game that would be the biggest for OU in their first SEC season?
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at it, when I ranked all 128 SEC games, it's not necessarily the most important OU game, but I think it is the most important SEC game.
Yeah.
Because the opposite of the OU's conference schedule is the Missouri schedule. The Tigers were given a cushy road. Their third toughest game is at Texas A&M. They play Alabama. And they play host OU, and they go to A&M. So Missouri has a bunch of easy games. The Tigers could win 9 without being all that great of a team. Non-conference, very easy. So when OU goes up there, I think the date is mid-November, November 10th, maybe 9th. I think it's November 9th when OU goes to Columbia. I mean, Missouri could be sitting at 8-1. And, ranked 5th in the country or 6th in the country or whatever the case may be. And so that would be a huge game for the SEC, huge game for Missouri. Heck, it might be a huge game for the Sooners too. So just the circumstances, when you get into here's what I don't think I appreciated this enough, Jacko. When you get into the 16-team conferences, the imbalanced schedules play an oversized part in how teams do. So I think that's going to be a key, is how can Oklahoma navigate this very difficult schedule?
Yeah, it is difficult because, as you mentioned, impactful for OU, impactful for the other team. But I thought it was interesting, a game that so many Sooner fans have had, sort of in theory circled for a long time, but now it's in reality circled. That OU Alabama game, you've got it as the fourth best OU game in your rankings, which some people might say, what the heck? That's the top one for me. But again, it's about impact on the SEC. And I think it bears mentioning that a lot of this depends on how do these teams, what does their season look like? This game could have way more impact depending on how OU and Alabama do.
No doubt about it. I mean, I think the Sooners are optimistic. I think they believe they'll go into late November in great shape and have a chance to make the playoff, all those things, maybe a chance to make it to Atlanta for the SEC championship game. But if things go sideways, those 6 really tough games that we mentioned on November 23rd, OU will have already played 4 of them. Say they only win 1 of those 4, and all of a sudden they are 2-4 in the conference. Then Alabama at Oklahoma is not that big of a game, except to the Bama's pride. Don't want to get upset. And OU trying to salvage a season. It's not going to have big ramifications on the playoff. The Sooners would be out. So I think when you look at big games, the earlier in the season is the better chance that it's going to be a big game, because by the end of the year, it could be a kaput for a lot of teams. So early season showdowns carry more weight, I think, than late season showdowns. In the old days, remember, late season showdowns, that it could be for the conference title, could be for one of the few spots in the playoff. But like Michigan, Ohio State is an example this year. Odds are they're not going to be playing for a spot in the playoff. There's 12-team playoff. Yeah. Lots of open doors to walk through. They might have already both walked through that door. So that's one of the factors in OU Alabama not being ranked quite as high.
Yeah, by the way, you say the olden days, what, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years ago. You remember back when Central Florida was in the American Conference.
Oh, the olden days. I love the olden days. Hey, last thing about your SEC rankings. An important question for Sooner Nation: is the SEC already favoring Texas? Berry, 4 games in your top 10 for Texas. That's a big number, including you mentioned that non-conference game against Michigan. But then there's only one more Texas-related game in the top 55 of your rankings. What in the heck is going on here?
Well, Texas got an easy schedule compared to the Sooners. It was nothing personal. I don't think they met in the Star Chamber in Birmingham and said, "Hey, let's screw the Sooners. Let's lift up the Longhorns."
They might have. Some conspiracy theorists would say so.
I don't think that happened.
Okay.
I do think they said, who are going to be our best teams in 2024? Who can we lay out a paved, nice road? It's like your county commissioner. Who's going to get the roads fixed? Well, the influential people, the people who can do the most for the county or for the county commissioner, are going to get the potholes filled before the guy who doesn't have much sway. Oklahoma doesn't have much sway right now because they're not seen as being back on top of their game. Texas is. Texas got the easy schedule. When you look at, they divided it up, the 14 legacy teams in the SEC. Nobody's playing OU and Texas twice. OU got 7 of them. Texas got 7 of them. And when you pair those teams up, they clearly gave Texas the advantage. When you look at Alabama, Georgia, that's sort of a wash. Texas actually plays Georgia. I think that's a tougher assignment. So that's the one place where OU sort of got a break. But if you go to, the Alabama, Georgia partners in tradition, Auburn and Florida, that's sort of a wash. OU got Auburn. That's a wash. But everywhere else, Missouri, Arkansas. OU got Missouri. Mississippi State, Ole Miss. OU got Ole Miss. That kind of thing. Tennessee, Kentucky. OU got Tennessee. So it just became Texas A&M, LSU. OU got LSU. So OU drew the short straw, no doubt about it. But the reason was strictly business. SEC just wants to prop up. They want to get as many teams, the Missouris, the Texases, to join Georgia and Alabama and whoever else. Mississippi has a very easy schedule. Ole Miss. They're trying to get those five teams. I think they're trying to get those 5 teams into the playoffs.
Wow. Well, it'll be going to be interesting to watch, and those games will obviously be here before we know it. So we'll continue to talk about OU's move to the SEC, but let's change directions here just a second. Biggest news over the weekend, Barry. I think without a doubt around here, it was the news that NiJaree Canady is in the transfer portal. Stanford's amazing pitcher. She's National Player of the Year as a sophomore this last season. So what's your best guess on how soon she's in Norman for an official recruiting visit?
Well, my best guess is to ask my favorite softball expert, and that is Jennifer Gale Carlson of Clay Center, Kansas. So I got a couple of questions for you.
Oh, boy.
My impression was, and got it from you and some others, is that when she came out of Topeka, she actually was a little bit more smitten with OSU than OU. So my question is was there something about OU that just wasn't a fit, that didn't work or whatever? And has that changed? Or what's going on there? It just never seemed like OU you'd think, unbelievable power.
Yeah.
250 miles south of Topeka, 300, whatever it is. Seemed like a natural, but it never really was even a consideration. What do you think was going on there?
Well, to me, I think there's a good chance that it was all about Jordy Ball, because NiJaree Canady, who we saw as a true freshman 2 years ago, was unbelievable. I mean, she basically carried Stanford to the Women's College World Series as a freshman, which was Jordy Ball's sophomore year. So if you're in Canady's shoes and you sign with OU, you're essentially hitching yourself to a team that already has an ace. Now, maybe if Canady goes, she beats out Ball, but nobody had any idea that Jordy Ball was going to transfer to Nebraska. Had, Canady known that, maybe OU looks a lot more attractive to her coming out of high school in Topeka. But you're right, Barry. I mean, as far as geography goes, makes a lot of sense for OU to have been higher consideration for her coming out of high school. But, the Stanford degree, I'm sure the chance to go in there and be an ace right away. Stanford had another top pitcher, Elena Vaughter, who actually transferred out a year ago, was at South Carolina this last year, but isn't nearly the level of talent. She's good. She's not the level of talent that Jordy Ball is, or will be once she's back from that knee injury. So I'm assuming that was a big part of it, that Canady knew if she was going to go in and play a lot, pitch a lot as a freshman, might not happen quite so readily at OU. So I think that was maybe part of it. And now they need an ace very badly. I mean, obviously they lose Kelly Maxwell, who transferred in last year, became their ace, but they're also losing 3 other pitchers. S.J. Guerin is in the transfer portal. She could have returned, but then Nicole May and Carly Keeney are out of eligibility. So, I mean, when you think about what she could do to OU's hopes for 2025, I mean, she could put them on a rocket ship, Barry. Right now, I like what OU's got coming back as far as with Ella Parker, with Cassidy Pickering. Their freshman class looks really talented. But they don't have an arm. They don't have anybody who looks capable of carrying. But if Canady comes in, she carried Stanford to the Women's College World Series again this year with a really lackluster offense. If she goes to OU, I think they become a World Series and national championship contender in an instant, which is unbelievable. But I think that's actually what she could do for their hopes in 2025.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt she's a little bit of a throwback pitcher, in that the way she dominates game after game after game. This is sort of, Stanford plays softball the way we watched softball 20 years ago, where 2-1 was a slugfest. And, Canady pitched great in the World Series, but Stanford got shut out twice by Texas, just didn't score much in the way of offense. So, yeah, going to a place like OU, a place that traditionally puts a ton of runs on the board, it is a natural geographic fit. It's an unbelievable situation. If she's got no preconceived displacement from disconnect from OU, then I think if it is just didn't really want to share time with Jordy Ball, then I think OU would be a natural. And you're right, it would make the Sooners an instant contender, perhaps even the favorite to go for the 5-peat.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't have any insight to say yes or no, but I think when it comes to status, NIL, I mean, all the things that, I think players, of her stature have to be thinking about. She's a caliber of player that she's going to probably play professionally if that's what she wants to do. She has a chance to be a national team member, all of that sort of thing. But the money may never be better than it is right now for her when it comes to making a living as a softball player. So the chance to cash in NIL, it's nowhere is it better than at OU. So I don't know if she lands there. I mean, I have no doubt her phone has been blowing up ever since news of her entering the portal hit. To my understanding, she went in over the weekend, but the portal doesn't update officially until Monday, which I don't know why, but that's what I had heard through the grapevine. So that should have become official. And then I get, then at that point, I would imagine her trips are just going to be bountiful. But think about this, Barry. If she comes to OU and OSU, who has loaded up themselves out of the transfer portal, Ruby Malin from Washington is coming in, Riley Crandall from Baylor, two very sought-after pitchers. Really the only other pitcher that could have gone in the portal and probably outpaced them might have been Canady. And there she is. If OU and OSU could have those three pitchers, the teams that they have around them. I mean, we already know softball's crazy in this state, but what could that look like? Can you wrap your head around what that might mean for softball in our state?
Well, I mean, it makes you sort of sad that they won't be playing a 3-game conference schedule. Now, there seems to be some optimism that the series is going to survive in the regular season. Yeah. I'm in believe it when I see it mode, but it does put the Cowgirls and the Sooners back on the fast track back to Oklahoma City. I don't know that even with Canady that OU would be the overwhelming favorite they've been the last 2 or 3 years, but getting them both back to Oklahoma City would be fantastic. 6 straight years for Kenny and Stillwater, potential 5 straight championships for Patty and Norman. So, yeah, and you know what it probably does? It probably would wipe out any notion of them meeting in a regional or super regional. That's coming to a ballpark at some point in the future in different conferences. They could be paired in a regional. It would take a little bit of a step down for both of them, or a big step down for one of them to fall to a number 2 seed. But this would probably negate even the super regional, probably both top 8 national seeds, if things go as we would suspect they would.
Yeah, and you're exactly right about that, because the softball selection committee is more likely to look geographically. That's why we saw Texas A&M in a super regional. We've seen some of those types of things. So yeah, that's going to happen with NCAA selections in all sports, is these two split conferences, and obviously softball being as big as it is in this state, and maybe on the way to being even bigger, if that's possible, that would make it definitely one of those highlights for us as coverers. Now, I don't know if it would make that way for fans. I can't speak for them. That'd be a lot of anxiety, but it'd definitely be fun to see. All right, let's go to our final bit, Barry. We've talked OU football to the SEC. We've talked NiJaree Canady and OU softball. Now let's talk a little NBA basketball. As we sit here, the NBA finals are not over, but for all intents and purposes, they've probably been over for about a week since no team has ever recovered in the history of the NBA playoffs from a 3-0 hole, which is what the Mavs have faced. So chances are very good the Celtics are going to win. By the time you're hearing this out there, they may have already won. But Barry, you have written that whether it's the C's or the Mavs, there's a definite sign of parity in the league. Why do you believe that parity has come to the NBA?
Well, the NBA has, for literally the entirety of its existence, has been a league of dynastic runs. We had Minneapolis, going back to the Lakers of Minneapolis at the onset of I think the real iteration of the NBA started in 1947. The Minneapolis Lakers won 5 titles in 6 years, 49 through 54. So then you saw the Celtics not long after that, 11 of 13. And then you've seen the Showtime Lakers and the Kobe Lakers and the Bulls, the Jordan Bulls, and then the Spurs and the Warriors of recent vintage. So you've seen teams just dominate over stretches of time. You have not had a ton of really good stretches where anybody could win it or lots of teams could win it, but we're in one.
Yeah.
If these guys, not going to, one of these teams are going to be the 6th different champion in the last 6 years. 19 Raptors, 20 Lakers, 21 Bucks, 22 Warriors, 23 Nuggets, now 24 Celtics or Mavs. So that's a change. That's not anything. We've seen it once before in the NBA in the late 70s, but that quickly gave away when Larry Bird and Magic Johnson got to the NBA. So, I think we also have more teams that could win it. In the East, Celtics won in a walkover, but most of that was because of injuries. Joel Embiid in Philly, Giannis in Milwaukee, both of those teams could win NBA titles this year with the right kind of health. In the West, all kinds of teams could have won the NBA title, and that's what you want. The problem you have is the Thunder, with this group they've got, the emerging core, the great assets, the deep roster, they actually don't need any help with parity. They were positioned to be NBA challengers for several years without the help of parity. So it's a little bit of an unfortunate timing that it looks like more teams, the Minnesotas, potentially New Orleans with a lot of assets and a good roster, Denver with Jokic, Dallas with Luka, whatever the LA teams do. So lots of teams can win it. The Thunder clearly is one of those either way, but they don't really need parity to be in that club. It's unfortunate, but they're going to have to win it the hard way. They're going to have to beat a lot of good teams to bring the first NBA title to Oklahoma City.
You know, as you talk about the parity, and you're right, when you think about the number of teams that could have made the finals from both conferences, it's a fairly long list. And yet, I think about these playoffs as a whole, and Barry, I don't want to say it's a dud, but it's pretty close to dud status when you think about start to finish these playoffs. I really, the sort of shots at the end to win games have been few. Jamal Murray had a couple in that Denver series, but, just not a ton of great, close, buzzer-beating type of games. So if we're trending towards dud overall in the playoffs, how do you sort of match the parity that's out there with what we've actually seen in the playoffs?
Well, I think they're tied in, and here's the conduit, the three-point shot. The three-point shot has become so prevalent. Everyone's using it. Go back and look at the early Durant years of the Thunder and how many three-point shots the Thunder would attempt compared to now. It's more than doubled. And the thing about deep shooting, sure, lots of teams are better than other teams. Lots of players are better than other players. But still, there is sort of a randomness to three-point shooting because it's such a long shot. And that's how you get sort of strange results, blowouts, upsets, big comebacks. It's a more chaotic game. And when you've got that, the 3-point shot makes for great comebacks. Like, Dallas, what was it? Was it game 2 or 3? I can't remember. They're down 29 or 28 or something. They cut it to 8, in the fourth quarter. And you think, wow. And then the Celtics sort of regain control and put it back up. But when you've got that kind of randomness, it's harder for a game to sort of get into the last minute and be 98-96 or 111-109. So I think that's one of the things that's going on is it makes for great theater on one side, but it also hurts the drama on the other.
Yeah, I remember Mark Daignault saying in that Dallas series that these big swings in scores is pretty normal. And he said it about the Mavs, but really you could probably say that about most teams because big leads can bloom and then they can disappear just as quickly. And frankly, what you said about the 3-point shooting, Barry, I have to think even though the Thunder sees this increased parity around the league, their 3-point shooting took a huge leap this last year. Don't they have to feel good about not just the talent they have, but the type of style that they're playing? It'll fit well in this parity-driven league that the NBA has become.
Yeah, and one thing I like about the Thunder offense is they do shoot a bunch of threes. I mean, I can't remember. I seem like they finished 13th or 14th in 3-point attempts.
Yeah.
Finished second in 3-point percentage, which that makes you a good offense. But they also have other things going on. They have great drivers. When you look at SGA and Santa Clara Williams and Josh Giddey, their mid-range game is very good with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Santa Clara Williams. Holmgren's pretty good at that as well. So they score a lot of different ways, and that's the best kind of offense. So they don't have to win with the 3. Well, I shouldn't say that. Nobody wins without the 3.
Yeah. But
they're not overly reliant on it, I guess. They've got other options. That's one thing to really like about the roster as it's currently constructed.
Yeah. Which obviously with what's coming next, which is the draft, I'm sure we'll be talking about that next week. But we'll see how that roster continues to evolve. All right, before we let you out of here, give us a little sneak preview. What do you have coming up at TulsaWorld.com?
Well, we talked a lot about the SEC rankings. I'm doing the same with the Big 12 this week. So
yes,
on Sunday, you'll see all 118 Big 12 games ranked. And 118 is a strange number, but here's how it got off kilter. Big 12 has 2 games this year matching conference teams that are not conference games. It takes some explanation, but including Arizona, Kansas State, which could be the teams in the Big 12 championship game. So welcome to modern football where conference realignment has just made kookiness everywhere. But that's what I got going this week. Also got a couple of other items. Negro League Baseball's got a great event this week. You wrote about this, the potential changing of the Big 12 name to a corporate name. I find that fascinating. So some of those things will be in the pipeline in the Tulsa World.
All right. People can go there, subscribe, see all your work, tulsaworld.com/subscribe's how they get there. But that's all the time we've got for now. So please let me ask you to subscribe to my stuff, YouTube channel and my Substack. It's easy and it's free, but if you want to support my work financially, I'd appreciate that too. You can do that via my Substack, jennicarlson.substack.com. A quick word of thanks to my video dream team, Jacqueline Musgrove and Michael Lane. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.